You may be wondering about the status of your savings amid recent changes as pertains to inflation, a small number of banks collapsing, and President Biden's first bill veto earlier this week. The veto means that some pension fund managers still have the option to invest retirees' money according to environmental and social justice criteria. Today, we'll dig into some of the questions you may have with Epoch Times business reporter Kevin Stocklin. He also looks deeply at the ESG movement in his documentary, The Shadow State, and I spoke with him earlier today. Kevin Stocklin, thanks for coming on again. Now, Biden says the ESG rule that he vetoed would have put people's retirement savings at risk. The argument is that ESG factors, like natural disasters, say, could conceivably affect investments. How do you see Biden's reasoning here?
Yeah, well, I think it's really important for people to understand what's going on with this fight. And if I could give just a very quick background, all of this turns on a law called ERISA. It's the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. And this law was passed in the 70s regarding pension funds. And it was passed because all sorts of mismanagement and fraud was going on with people's pension money. We had the mob, Jimmy Hoffa using things like Teamsters pension funds to lend money to themselves and buying homes in Florida. So the whole reason that this law was first passed was to say that if you are managing people's pension money, you have the highest standard of fiduciary care and you can only invest it for monetary reasons to maximize their return. And what Biden has done effectively is said you now can also consider environmental and social justice components when you invest people's pension money. And that is really what this whole fight turns on. So Biden justifies this, and he would have us believe that ESG is a risk management tool that is going to enhance investment returns. His timing is a bit off, unfortunately, because the CEO of Vanguard Asset Management, one of the largest asset managers, came out in February and said that there is no positive effect from ESG investing that they can see, according to their research. The chief investment officer of State Street testified in December to the Texas State Senate, the very same thing, no tangible benefit from ESG investments. And on top of that, we now have studies from Harvard, from Columbia, from the London School of Economics that say not only do ESG factors not enhance returns, they actually hurt returns.
Prior to its collapse, Silicon Valley Bank earned top ESG governance scores. It's been criticized for focusing on ESG at the expense of its fiscal responsibilities. How do you see it?
Yeah, well, so anyone can just take a look through their recent 10K filings that they have to file with the SEC. So it was very obvious in 2022 and 2023 that they were in a very precarious management position. Their portfolios were illiquid. They were heavily invested in fixed income securities that had lost a lot of value. And yet, they spent three full paragraphs talking about their exposure to climate risk and temperature change. Obviously, a diversion of management to be pursuing these sort of goals, these ESG goals, instead of focusing on their core business issues.
Some people may want to be able to choose to risk their investments to support ESG goals. Is there anything wrong with providing that option, do you think?
No, absolutely not. If you want to use your retirement money to pursue political or social justice causes, you're absolutely free to do that, and there's nothing that should limit or constrain people from doing that. My point is, at least be honest with people if they're going to do that. Don't lead them to believe that these investments are good for their returns, that they're actually going to produce more money for them as a risk management tool when they go to retire. That is a myth. And one other thing that I might point out, the former chief investment officer of BlackRock, one of the most progressive asset managers and the largest, has come out and said that there's no evidence that ESG investing actually helps the environment or helps social justice causes. So for people who make that choice, you may just be sending more money to asset managers on Wall Street in the form of higher management fees.
Could all Americans simply move their savings to a fund that aligns with their values or choices? Are all retirement funds at risk of having ESG criteria applied?
Right. So this law just applies to private pension funds. And, you hopefully do have an option to invest in non-ESG causes with your pension money. But that really depends on the individual plan offered by your company. And I encourage everybody to look into that.
It was a bipartisan bill that made it all the way to the president's desk that he vetoed. How do you see this veto by Biden in the context of a potential 2024 run and an increasingly shaky financial system?
Yeah, what a rare event that you can get Republicans and Democrats to agree on something, and yet they agreed that this was something so egregious that they came together. On the one hand, I encourage people to learn about this issue, but a lot of this finance stuff happens, behind the scenes, and it's fairly arcane, and not everyone understands what's going on. So unfortunately, the effects of using ESG in people's pension money, if that reduces returns, will not be felt for 10 or 20 or 30 years until people actually go to retire and they realize that they don't have enough money. And you may say, well, hey, if I'm just losing 1 or 2% to ESG investments, what's the big deal? The problem is over time, that compounds and it makes a tremendous difference. One of the biggest factors when you invest for retirement or savings or anything else is the rate of return. And losing 1 or 2% a year when that accumulates over decades makes an enormous difference. And it could be the difference between people having enough money to retire comfortably or not.
Kevin Stocklin, business reporter at the Epoch Times and host and producer of the Shadow State documentary. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.